Hey there, fellow bookworms. Welcome to Book to Read.
Oh, I like that.
It's the podcast that, well, helps you figure out, if a book is worth your reading time.
Makes sense. We all have those TBR piles, right?
Exactly. And for our very first deep dive, we're tackling Atomic Habits by James Clear.
A great choice.
You've all been so curious about this one, and you've sent in excerpts and quotes and even some personal notes.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we've sifted through it all.
So much good stuff there.
For sure. So what's all the buzz about?
Well, this book, it's really resonating with people, and for good reason, I think. It's not about, those drastic overnight changes. Atomic Habits is all about the power of small 1% improvements every single day.
Small changes, big impact, huh?
Exactly. And how those tiny shifts can lead to some remarkable results over time.
It's like that saying, right? Little by little, a little becomes a lot.
I love that.
But is this just another self-help book? Or does Clear actually offer something, truly unique?
That's the question.
Right. And what are you hoping to discover in this deep dive?
Keep those questions in mind as we unpack this.
Absolutely.
One thing that really sets this book apart, at least in my opinion, is how Clear emphasizes that success isn't about some grand, transformation. It's the product of our daily habits.
Okay, I like that.
It's those tiny things we do day in and day out that really add up.
So consistency is key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He uses a really powerful analogy of compound interest to illustrate this. Just like small deposits consistently made can lead to, significant wealth.
That's what he says.
Those tiny improvements in your habits compounded over time can result in some incredible growth.
Wow. That's powerful.
Right.
I actually, I jotted down one of his quotes that really struck me. It said, "Time magnifies the margin between success and failure."
Ooh, I like that.
It's just such a good reminder that, our daily actions really matter.
They really do. It makes you stop and think, are the things we're doing each day, are they moving us closer to our goals or further away?
Ooh, good question. So how do we actually make those 1% improvements then?
Right. This is where Clear's 4 laws of behavior change come into play.
Okay, the 4 laws. I've heard about these.
It's a framework that seems almost deceptively simple, but that's part of its genius,
Yeah.
Anyone can grasp it and start applying it immediately.
So what are they?
He lays it out like this. Cue, craving, response, reward.
Okay. Cue, craving, response, reward.
Yeah.
Got it.
But Clear doesn't just explain the laws. He uses incredibly vivid examples to bring them to life,
Right.
The one that always sticks with me is the story about baby gulls and the red dots on their mother's beaks.
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating.
It is. Those tiny red dots are a powerful cue that triggers the chicks to peck for food. What's so fascinating is that, even subtle visual cues like that can have a huge impact on our behavior.
It's amazing how our brains work.
It is. And the thing is, these 4 laws aren't just theoretical concepts. They're constantly at play in our lives, influencing us in subtle but significant ways. Think about, those Japanese factories.
Okay, yeah.
That redesigned their workspaces.
I remember reading about that.
They made tiny adjustments to their environment so workers didn't have to, waste time reaching for tools or whatever.
Yeah.
And those seemingly small changes, well, they resulted in huge gains in productivity.
So it's all about those little tweaks, right?
Exactly. So how can we apply this to our own lives, right? A good place to start is by identifying the cues that trigger our current habits, and thinking about what we're actually craving. Then we can, manipulate those cues to make good habits more obvious and attractive and bad habits invisible and unattractive.
So we become architects of our own behavior.
You got it. But Clear goes deeper than just, those external cues.
Yeah.
He delves into the fascinating connection between our habits and our identity.
Okay, this is where things get interesting.
It does. Clear suggests that the focus shouldn't be solely on achieving a specific outcome. It's about, becoming a certain type of person.
I see. So it's more about who you are than what you do.
Exactly. He even says the focus should always be on becoming that type of person, not getting a particular outcome.
That is a powerful quote. It really makes you think.
Right.
What type of person do you want to become? And what habits will help you get there?
Those are the questions.
So we've been talking about how our brains, they're wired for habit formation, but there's another piece of the puzzle, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That we can't ignore. Our environment.
Yeah. We've all heard that saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But Clear takes this concept a step further. He argues that our physical surroundings have an even bigger impact on our habits than we realize.
Really?
Mm.
That's interesting. I noticed you highlighted a section in the book. It talked about how simply rearranging the layout of the cafeteria at Massachusetts General Hospital, I think it was,
Yep.
had a significant impact on people's food choices.
It's a perfect example, right, of how powerful those subtle environmental nudges can be.
Yeah.
Just by making healthier options more visible and convenient,
Yeah.
they were able to encourage people to make better choices without even realizing it.
Wow. That's crazy. It's almost like our environment is constantly, like, shaping our behavior.
It is, whether we're conscious of it or not, you know?
Right.
There's another fascinating example from the book about a study in Pakistan that looked at hand-washing habits. And it turned out people knew they should wash their hands, but they weren't consistently doing it.
So it wasn't like a knowledge problem.
No.
It was a behavior problem.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that they were able to dramatically increase hand-washing rates simply by making the experience, well, more enjoyable.
Oh, interesting.
They introduced a new type of soap, more pleasant to use, and they saw a huge improvement in hygiene.
So the key takeaway here is that we're more likely to stick to habits when they're not only easy,
Right.
but also enjoyable.
That's it. It's about understanding that our environment is constantly shaping our behavior, and then using that knowledge to design our surroundings in a way that, well, supports our desired habits, right?
I love that. Thinking about all this, what stands out to you from your own notes? Like, what changes can you make to your environment to make good habits easier and bad habits harder?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, one of the simplest but most effective strategies, I think, is to make the cues for good habits more obvious.
Okay.
And the cues for bad habits less obvious.
So, like, what? Give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you want to eat healthier.
Yeah.
You could keep a bowl of fruit on the counter
Makes sense.
and put those tempting snacks, like, out of sight, tucked away in a cupboard or something.
Out of sight, out of mind?
Exactly. Or if you're trying to read more, put a book on your bedside table, right? So it's the first thing you see when you wake up.
Ah, I like that. So it's all about, like, setting yourself up for success.
You got it.
What about creating distinct environments for different activities? I remember reading in your notes about Clear's advice on designating specific workspaces.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Mhm.
Clear talks about how working from his couch and kitchen table, it just made it tough to switch off at the end of the day,
I can relate to that.
Once he had a separate office, it became much easier to maintain those boundaries
Yeah.
between work and personal time.
Yeah. It's like having that physical separation, it creates a mental separation as well.
Exactly. And even if you don't have a dedicated room, you can still create distinct zones within your space for different activities,
Okay.
like a cozy reading nook or a designated workout corner.
The key is to make it clear to your brain.
Right.
This is where this specific activity happens.
I like that.
Okay. So we've covered the basics, but what about when we're ready to, level up our habit formation? Are there any advanced strategies in the book? I know we both found the section on the Goldilocks rule really interesting.
Yes. The Goldilocks rule, this is a fascinating idea. It's all about finding that sweet spot of challenge
Okay.
that keeps us motivated and engaged. It suggests that we're most motivated when we're working on tasks that are, well, right at the edge of our current abilities, not too easy.
Right.
It's not too hard.
So it's that perfect balance
It is.
that kind of stretches us but doesn't overwhelm us.
Think about it this way. If a task is too easy, we get bored.
Yeah.
If it's too hard, we get discouraged, right?
Right.
But when we find that Goldilocks zone, that's where the magic happens.
I love that. This resonates so much. It applies to so many areas of life,
It does.
beyond just habit formation.
Oh, sure.
But how do we find that sweet spot for our habits?
It requires a bit of experimentation, I think, and self-awareness. We need to honestly assess our current abilities and then gradually increase the challenge, as we progress.
Okay, I like that.
And that's where reflection and review come into play.
Oh, interesting.
Clear emphasizes that to continuously improve, we need to regularly assess our habits, right? And make adjustments as needed.
So it's not like set it and forget it.
No. It's about staying engaged with the process
Yeah.
and being willing to, make tweaks along the way.
Got it. So it's a journey, not a destination.
You got it.
Something else I underlined in my notes
Yeah.
was the importance of dealing with the inevitable boredom that comes with building new habits.
Oh, for sure.
We can have all the motivation in the world at the beginning, but how do we keep going when that initial excitement wears off?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
Well, Clear shares a really insightful anecdote about an elite athletic coach who had worked with, Olympians. And that coach believed the key differentiator between the best athletes and everyone else was their ability to handle the monotony of training day after day.
That's surprising. I would have thought it would be something like, passion or grit.
Right. But it makes you realize that success isn't always about feeling super motivated or, excited.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just about having the discipline to, show up and do the work.
Even when you don't feel like it.
Even when you don't feel like it.
It's about building those systems, those routines
Right.
that keep us on track, regardless of our, fluctuating emotions.
Exactly. Clear makes a distinction between professionals and amateurs.
Oh, interesting.
Professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs, well, they let life get in the way.
So it's about making your habits non-negotiable.
You got it.
Okay. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. Before we jump into the final part of this deep dive, how about we give everyone a moment to digest all this? Let's shift gears and explore the last law of behavior change, making it satisfying, along with some tactics for breaking those pesky bad habits. All right, so welcome back to Book to Read. We've been exploring James Clear's Atomic Habits and how to, harness the power of tiny changes. Now let's talk about that final law of behavior change, making it satisfying.
Yeah.
We've discussed how to make desired actions obvious, attractive, and easy. But why is making a habit satisfying so crucial?
Yeah.
Shouldn't the feeling of moving toward our goals be motivating enough?
That's the ideal, right? To be driven by that inherent satisfaction
Right.
of achieving our goals. However, as Clear points out, we live in a world where the benefits of our good habits often don't show up right away. Like, you might exercise today,
Yeah.
but they could be weeks or even months before you see a change in your body.
So our brains, they crave that instant gratification.
They do.
But good habits demand a long-term commitment.
Long game. It's tough. Our brains evolved to prioritize those immediate rewards, Imagine our ancestors securing food and shelter today was more important than, saving for retirement.
Makes sense.
From a survival standpoint, it makes perfect sense. But it definitely makes things harder when we're trying to build those habits for the long haul.
For sure. So how do we do that then? How do we make those good habits more satisfying? I know you've got some ideas from your notes.
Yeah, well, Clear talks about using what he calls immediate rewards, right? It could be something as small as like a mental high five after finishing a workout, or, enjoying a long bath after a productive work week.
So it's about linking those small, enjoyable things to our good habits.
You got it. You create that positive feedback loop that strengthens the behavior.
I see.
And then there's habit tracking. I know you've experimented with that.
I have, and I'm finding it surprisingly motivating.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there are a few reasons. First, it makes your progress, visible. When you're working towards a long-term goal, it's easy to lose sight of how far you've come.
Yeah.
But with habit tracking, you have a tangible record of your efforts.
It's like that visual reminder.
It is, of each small win along the way.
Yeah.
And it can create accountability, right? If you're going to mark your progress, you're less likely to, skip a day.
True.
Plus, the act of tracking itself can be satisfying.
Yeah.
There's something about checking things off a list.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It feels good.
It does.
So this all ties in beautifully with what we discussed earlier about how our brains are wired for these small rewards.
For sure.
But let's flip the script for a second. We've talked a lot about, building good habits.
Yeah.
What about breaking bad ones?
Ah, yes. The dark side. Well, Clear suggests that the most effective way to break a bad habit is to make it unsatisfying. He suggests using a habit contract, a written agreement that outlines the consequences of, slipping up.
So that adds an extra layer of accountability then.
Exactly. So if you break your commitment, there's a penalty.
What kind of penalties are we talking about here?
It could be anything. Doing an extra chore, donating to a cause you don't support,
Ooh,
even paying a friend a certain amount of money.
I like that.
And even without a formal contract, just having an accountability partner can be helpful.
It's like you're tapping into that social pressure
We are.
to motivate positive change.
Exactly. Humans are social creatures. We care what others think,
We do.
even if it's just one accountability partner. So what stands out to you from this whole deep dive? What's your big takeaway?
I think for me, it's how James Clear breaks down this seemingly complicated process of habit formation into a kind of like, a simple and actionable framework. It's not about finding some magic solution. It's about building a system for getting 1% better every single day.
And those small improvements made consistently, they can lead to remarkable results.
Right. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure, as Clear says.
Such a good quote.
The little choices we make each day, they have an enormous impact on our future selves.
Absolutely. So what's the one tiny habit you can start building today to bring you closer to your goals? Remember, even a 1% improvement each day can make a huge difference over time.
That's right. Thank you for joining us on this first episode of Book to Read. If you're intrigued by the idea of atomic habits, we highly recommend picking up the book.
Yes.
It's a game changer. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more insightful deep dives into fascinating books, and let us know your thoughts on social media. Until next time, happy reading.